On July 4th, 1997, in front of 45,000 screaming fans at Munich's Olympic Stadium, Michael Jackson did something that no other superstar has ever done. He stopped his entire show mid-song, pointed directly at security, and demanded they release a fan who was being roughly handled in the front row. The stadium fell into complete silence as the king of pop broke his untouchable persona to protect someone he'd never met, transforming what should have been just another concert into a moment that revealed the man behind the legend. But what was it about that one fan situation that made Michael Jackson risk everything: his performance, his image, and his carefully orchestrated show to step in as their protector? Summer air hung thick and electric over Munich's Olympic Stadium as countless voices merged into a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the concrete Colosseum. July 4th, 1997, a date that would forever be etched in the memories of those who witnessed what unfolded that night. An enormous stage gleamed under blinding spotlights, its elaborate set pieces rising like monuments to the artistry about to unfold. Giant video screens flanked the performance area, ready to magnify every gesture, every movement of the man they'd all come to see. This architectural marvel was a testament to engineering and anticipation. Hundreds of carefully positioned lights created an intricate web of illumination that would transform the venue into a cathedral of entertainment. A sophisticated sound system, comprised of numerous speakers strategically placed throughout the venue, was tested and retested to ensure that every note, every whisper from the stage would reach fans in the furthest seats with crystal clarity. This wasn't just a concert, it was a meticulously crafted experience designed to transport audiences into another realm entirely. In the front row, pressed against cold metal barriers, stood devoted fans who waited hours in scorching heat for this experience. Among them was a teenager, his eyes bright with anticipation, wearing a faded Thriller t-shirt that had seen better days. He clutched a handmade sign declaring his love for the superstar, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from pure excitement. This was his first Michael Jackson concert, a dream he'd saved for months to afford. His sign, crafted with careful precision using colored markers and cardboard, read, "Michael, you are my inspiration," in bold, uneven letters that spoke to the sincerity of his devotion. Crowd energy was palpable, almost dangerous in its intensity. Fans from every corner of Europe had converged on Munich for this performance, creating a diverse tapestry of languages, cultures, and backgrounds united by their shared love for one man's music. Some traveled for days, sleeping in train stations and scraping together every cent for tickets. Others had won radio contests or received tickets as precious gifts. Regardless of how they had arrived, they all shared the same electric anticipation that seemed to charge the very air around them. Officers in black uniforms lined the barriers, their faces stern and watchful. They'd been briefed extensively on the fervor of Michael Jackson fans, how they screamed until their throats gave out, fainted from sheer emotion, and sometimes tried to rush the stage in their desperate desire to get closer to their idol. These officers had worked countless concerts before, but they knew that Jackson events were different. Emotional intensity was unlike anything else in the entertainment world. Their mission was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Maintain order at all costs, while managing crowds that operated on pure passion rather than logic. Suddenly, stadium lights dimmed to complete darkness, and tens of thousands of hearts seemed to stop beating in unison as the night that would change everything began. Behind the glittering facade and booming applause, Jackson carried a weight that few could comprehend. He who had given the world Thriller, Billie Jean, and countless other masterpieces was exhausted to his core. The His Story World Tour had been grueling months of traveling from city to city, performing for millions of adoring fans while battling his own internal demons. Relentless media scrutiny had taken its toll, with tabloid headlines dissecting every aspect of his personal life, questioning his character, and painting him as an eccentric recluse, rather than the humanitarian he'd always strived to be. In his dressing room before the show, Jackson had sat in contemplative silence, his usual pre-performance ritual. His longtime costume designer had noticed the fatigue in his eyes, the way his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Just remember," he had whispered to himself, "it's about the music. It's about connecting with them." Music had always been his sanctuary, the one place where he felt truly understood and accepted. When he stepped onto that stage, he wasn't the controversial figure the media portrayed. He was simply an artist, sharing his gift with people who genuinely loved him for it. Pressure of maintaining his legendary persona was suffocating at times. Every gesture had to be perfect. Every note had to soar. Every dance move had to be executed with otherworldly precision. The world expected nothing less than perfection from the king of pop, and he had spent decades delivering exactly that. But beneath the sequin gloves and the moonwalk, beneath the carefully choreographed performances and the larger-than-life spectacle, was a man who simply wanted to be seen for who he truly was, someone who cared deeply about others, especially those who couldn't protect themselves. As he moved through Scream, with fluid grace that had made him a legend, his trained performer's eye swept across the audience. Years of experience had taught him to read a crowd's energy, to spot potential problems before they escalated. He could see personnel positioning themselves more aggressively along the front barriers, their body language tense and ready for confrontation. That's when he noticed the teenager in the faded shirt. This teenager was clearly struggling, caught in the crush of bodies pressing forward. But it wasn't just crowd pressure that caught Jackson's attention. It was what he saw happening with the security team. Officers were beginning to single out individual fans, their methods becoming increasingly heavy-handed as they tried to maintain control. His heart rate quickened, but not from the physical demands of the performance. Something about the scene unfolding below triggered a deep protective instinct within him. He had always felt a special connection to his fans, viewing them not as an abstract audience, but as individuals who had chosen to share in his musical journey. They weren't threats to be managed. They were human beings, deserving of respect and compassion. Music continued to pulse around him, but his focus had shifted entirely to the drama playing out in the front row. His movements became more mechanical as his attention was pulled away from the choreography and towards something far more important than any performance could ever be. Crisis arrived with shocking suddenness. As Jackson spun through a complex dance sequence, his peripheral vision caught the escalation he had been dreading. 3 officers had converged on the teenager in the Thriller shirt, their black-gloved hands gripping his arms with unnecessary force. The teenager's face contorted in pain and confusion as they began dragging him away from the barrier, his handmade sign crumpling to the ground and disappearing under the feet of the surging crowd. Without hesitation, Jackson's hand shot up in a sharp, commanding gesture that cut through the air like a blade. The gesture was so sudden, so authoritative, that his band members immediately ceased playing. Powerful backing track that had been reverberating through the stadium's sound system fell silent, as if someone had pulled the plug on the entire world. In an instant, the audience's ecstatic screaming was reduced to confused murmurs, then to an eerie, almost mystical silence. The arena fell into a vacuum of sound so complete that you could hear the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. Countless faces turned upward toward the stage in confusion, their expressions shifting from joy to bewilderment to growing awareness that something unprecedented was happening. Massive video screens that had been displaying Michael's performance now showed his face in stark close-up, his features set with a determination that few had ever witnessed. Jackson strode to the edge of the stage with purpose, his gold jacket catching the harsh white spotlights as he moved. Jackson's eyes locked onto the security situation below with laser focus, and when he raised his arm to point directly at the officers handling the teenager, The gesture carried the weight of absolute moral authority. "Stop!" His command cut through the silence like lightning, amplified by the venue's powerful sound system, so that every syllable reached the farthest corners of the venue. "Don't hurt him." Officers froze as if struck by electricity. Their grip on the teenager loosened involuntarily as they looked up at the stage in shock, their faces captured on the giant screens for all to see. The lead officer's mouth opened slightly, his expression one of complete disbelief that Michael Jackson himself had just called them out in front of tens of thousands of witnesses. Jackson's words softened, but lost none of their power as he continued. "He just wants to enjoy the show. Let him be." The message resonated through the venue with an intimacy that seemed impossible given the enormous scale of the space. In that instant, it felt as though he was speaking directly to each person present, addressing not just the security team, but everyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of authority. The fan, still trembling from the encounter, looked up at the stage with tears streaming down his face. Realization that his idol had just stopped an entire concert to protect him was staggering. Around him, other fans began to understand what they had witnessed, and a different kind of energy began building in the crowd, not the frenzied excitement of before, but something deeper, more profound. Jackson remained at the edge of the stage, his presence commanding absolute attention as the gravity of the situation settled over the arena like a blanket. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity, but in reality lasted only seconds that would be remembered for lifetimes. Officers, caught between their training and the undeniable moral authority of the man on stage, reluctantly released their grip on the teenager entirely. With visible reluctance, they stepped back, their faces flushed with embarrassment at having been so publicly corrected. But the King of Pop wasn't finished. In a gesture that shattered every barrier between superstar and audience, he walked closer to the edge of the platform and extended his hand toward the crowd below. "Come here," he said gently to the teenager, his words carrying the warmth of an older brother protecting a sibling. Officers, now moving with careful deference, helped guide the overwhelmed teenager closer to the platform where Jackson could see him clearly. Looking directly into the teenager's eyes, Jackson's expression softened into something beautiful and genuine. "Are you okay?" he asked, and though the question was directed at one person, the venue's acoustics carried it to everyone. The teenager nodded, unable to speak through his tears. He smiled, not the practiced smile of a performer, but the authentic expression of a man who had just done exactly what his heart commanded. Then Jackson did something that no one expected. He straightened up and addressed the entire crowd. Jackson's words filled with an emotion that made it clear he was speaking from the deepest part of his soul. "We're all here for the same reason tonight," he began, his message measured and purposeful. "We're here because music brings us together, because love brings us together. And when we're together like this, we take care of each other. Every single person in this place matters. Every single person deserves to feel safe and respected." The audience erupted, but this wasn't the screaming hysteria from before. This was something different, a wave of appreciation and love that seemed to physically lift the roof off the venue. People were crying, hugging strangers beside them, raising their hands not in frenzied excitement, but in acknowledgement of having witnessed something sacred. Jackson gestured to his band, and slowly, gently, the opening notes of "Heal the World" began to play. It wasn't on the planned set list, but it was the only song that made sense in this moment. As his vocals soared over the crowd, singing about making the world a better place and caring for one another, the teenager remained at the front barrier, now surrounded by officers who were treating him like precious cargo rather than a threat. Over 26 years later, that teenager, now a grown man with children of his own, still keeps that crumpled sign in a frame in his living room. He tells anyone who will listen about the night the King of Pop became simply human, when Michael Jackson chose compassion over spectacle, protection over performance. Concert footage from that night, when it finally surfaced years after Michael's death, showed not just an entertainer at the height of his powers, but a man whose greatest performance was simply being himself when it mattered most. Ripple effects of that experience extended far beyond the arena walls, becoming legend among Michael Jackson fans worldwide. Proof that behind all the glitter and glamour was a soul that understood what it truly meant to care for others. It was the night when thousands learned that the real magic wasn't in the moonwalk or the sequined glove, but in the simple act of one human being standing up for another when they needed it most.